Hello and welcome to this week's Career Cast. So I'm delighted to be with you again and to be joined by our career coaches. And today we've got Jane Garrard, we've got Joe Thurman and we've got Colin Lloyd. So welcome to you.
Morning.
Hi. Morning. Hi.
The aim of these casts are really just to be helpful. So we're taking key career challenges that you might be dealing with at the moment, or perhaps a member of your family is dealing with it, and trying to give some advice and tips. So today, I think what we wanted to focus on is particularly video interviewing, because there's a lot of that going on at the moment, and I think it's going to be a trend for the future. So the new age of video interviewing. Now, it's been around for a little while, but what are your thoughts? Is this a trend that's here to stay, do we think? What do you think, Joe?
Well, I think it probably is a trend that's here to stay, because we're hearing back from people that it's being used now right across the board up to very, very senior levels, including people presenting to board positions and being hired on the back of it. The things to think about are all the things that we've just been thinking about. So have I got the light on my face? What have I got behind me? Am I likely to be interrupted? So you have got to think about some additional things that perhaps you don't have to think about in quite the same way if you were walking into a room.
Colin, as for a recruiter, what are they looking for, and how is it different to a video interview rather than an in-person one?
I think interviews at the best of time or can be nerve-wracking, and I think that the newness for some people have never been involved in a video interview before can put an extra layer of concern and anxiety around it. And I think it's the same as it would be for a normal interview, if there is such a thing. And that's make sure you've done your preparation, be comfortable with the media that you're using as much as you can, and practice on friends, relatives. Don't go into it cold, as we would say for a live flesh and blood interview. I think the difficulty is building empathy and building that rapport with the interviewer. Just got to work harder at it, really, I guess.
It's Jane. So how do you build empathy with your interviewer?
Yeah, so it's so interesting. That's so important, because not being in the room with them is going to create a really different dynamic. So suggestion that clients and I have talked about recently is to try and make a connection with a member of the interview panel or the line manager before the interview takes place. So to just have an initial introductory call, that might be something about the tech to clarify, or the format of the interview, what's going to be discussed specifically, to help you prepare, but also just to start to build a little bit of a relationship before the call starts. I think remembering that it's new for everybody as well is quite helpful. So while Skype interviews have been around for a while, as we were saying, remote interviews, I think knowing that everybody's got the kind of, as Colin was talking about, the kind of tech anxiety is okay. We're all learning.
We are, and it was interesting. I think even in preparation for these career casts, we were kind of, is the lighting right? Where am I sitting? What's in the background? All of this is going on. But, technically, the visuals are really important, aren't they? It's just like in an interview, you're making a first impression. When you're meeting in person, again, the kind of visual record is important. Mm-hmm. So what are some of, Colin, if I can come to you, so technically, what are some of the pitfalls that people can fall into when they're doing a video interview?
Well, the classic one, and even though that we're quite skilled at these, is talking when you're on mute, something very simple like that, not being used to your tech. And you might have the best answer in the world and you forgot to unmute yourself. Or the other example, which is quite useful to know, is that obviously there's a danger that when you're doing a video interview, you look at the person's face on the screen, when ideally you should be looking at the camera to make that contact where you can. So there's things that you can do, but then again, that feels strange, because then you're not looking at the person when you're talking to them. And it's getting over these initial hiccups of how do you come across in your best possible light. And again, it's getting comfortable with the tech, practicing, and also as much as we hate, record one and watch it back. I know we all hate seeing ourselves on a screen, but that's really useful to pick up on whether you've got any nervous tics, or whether there's washing in the background, or whether the lighting's wrong. You're not going to go straight into a real life interview without practice, and it shouldn't be any different from a video interview.
Yeah, and kind of video feedback is a brutal form of feedback, but it tells you the truth, doesn't it? And Joe, I mean, so many people are working from home at the moment. What are some of the perils for having an interview when you're at home?
Possibly broadband access, because you might be sharing it with people who are also being homeschooled. So you might need to negotiate with other members of the household that they stay off the broadband so that you've got as strong a line and connection as you can have. You might need to let everybody know that you're in an out-of-bounds space for that period, and then not to enter. But hey, it's a bit human, isn't it? If the dog starts barking, or there's a knock on the door and you actually have to interrupt to say excuse me, or small child comes in, it wouldn't be what you would expect in a face-to-face interview. But to some extent, it does add a bit of human touch and a bit of humour. And in an unrealistic and unreal situation, it might add a bit of empathy and a bit of a connection.
With interviews, usually you're hoping that there's a real live person at the other end of the camera. But what about those automated video interviews where actually it's the computer bot generating questions? Any tips for dealing with those, Jane?
So automated interviews, yeah, I think they're definitely trickier because it really can feel like you are talking to yourself. You haven't got any reaction with a human being that you can see on your screen. So absolutely get used to the technology. It will usually give you the opportunity to practice how things work in terms of giving your answers. But before you do that, it's really important to, a day or two before, just get yourself comfortable with answering the questions that you are likely to be answered. So questions like, why do you want the job? What are your strengths? Tell us about your career goals. Those typical interview questions that you think will come up. Just practice running through with them yourself.
Because, Joe, I mean, a lot of the same questions are going to come up, aren't they? Or are there some different ones you think might arise nowadays?
I think they're going to be trying to work out the same thing, whatever the form of the questions, how they come across. But fundamentally, they're trying to work out if you actually can do the job. So they will have seen something in writing ahead of an interview. So that's indicated that you're capable. So now they just want to see it and hear it. So they'll want a bit more evidence about, can you do it? It's the first chance for them to get a bit more about you as an individual. So personality and some behaviours and some attitude. So how might you do the job? But I think also fundamentally, they're trying to work out, why would you want to do the job? So Colin and Jane have all talked about preparation. And that's a hugely important one, to be ready to say, I'm interested because. So yeah, preparation, but really, can you do it? How will you do it? And why will you do it?
I think the other thing, of course, is that interviews are two-way. So they're looking at you, but you're also having a look at them. But of course, that's not possible in the same way now. So Colin, if I can ask you, sometimes if you're going for an interview and you get a sense of the culture of an organisation just from being in the reception area or, the marketing or whatever, how can you find out if you've never actually met these people before and if you've never set foot in that company before, how can you tell whether that's likely to be the right kind of company for you to work in?
I think, as with most of the recruitment process now, it's gone online. So that's your first port of call. The company that you're interviewing with will obviously have a website. They may have an employee area there, where what it's like to work here. Certainly some bigger companies have that. But if you're looking for independent advice, there are places like Glassdoor where you can go and see what real employees that work there say. bit like TripAdvisor. You know, there'll be some good ones and some really bad ones, but you can do a temperature check as to whether you feel the feedback, the independent feedback you're getting on Glassdoor is the type of organisation you want to work for. The other thing is that if you've got to the stage of interview, then there must be something about the company that you want, that you like, that you want to work for them. So yeah, it's about doing your homework, but also, if you can, try and get some independent feedback from the resources that are available online. Great,
thank you. So just kind of rounding up for today, and some really fantastic advice. Thank you, panel. What might be your one tip if you've got a video interview coming up? Jo, what would be your one tip to kind of work on and perfect this week?
Whilst you might have made some notes on video, you can have some prompts. Make sure that you carry on looking up and don't write so much down that you spend your time looking down so the interviewer is looking at the top of your head.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jo. Colin, how about you?
Practice. Hideous though it is watching yourself on screen, it's the best way to do it. Run through it, do a dry run as much as you can, and then look at that feedback. And if you can bear to do it with someone who'll provide you with constructive feedback as well, then so much the better. But yeah, it's about the preparation.
Lovely. And Jane, over to you. Your tips.
Okay, so I think I'd say do everything you can to get yourself feeling good before the interview starts. So something that will help you relax, or equally it might be you want to do something that makes you feel more energized, and then dress up. Dress up as you absolutely would if you were, attending an interview out of the house. Get yourself feeling and looking good at your best. That's the version of you that you want your potential employer to see.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Jo, Jane and Colin today. We really hope you find that helpful. Do send us in your questions. We're going to be talking about lots of different career themes. I think CVs might be next time, but do let us know. Keep safe, and we wish you every success. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.